I've always been, for me, I have always tried to be the dumbest person in the room, the lowest person on the totem pole. And so I left Nashville and I moved to San Diego, and I immediately got plugged into several communities here where it like changed my life. Mastermind communities. I initially thought they were like some kind of scam or something, right? Like
Some cult.
it was so weird.
Ryan the
And
Time Bender in some cult in San Diego.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I thought it was some kind of cult, and then because we're all sitting around a table every Monday, talking about our lives, what we're doing, and it was just weird. And then over time, I realized like how critical and how much of my success has depended upon the room that I'm in and the people that I'm being influenced by.
Well, welcome to the High Performance Podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have Ryan Brazzell here on the call with us. I'm super pumped to have you hear his story. But right off the bat here, Ryan, describe what does high performance mean to you? How do you apply that to your life?
Yeah, high performance to me is, and I think like Dan Martell talks about this a lot. We all have this reason for being on earth. And I believe that like high performance for me is optimizing everything in my life to achieve that outcome and to realize that gift. And so I think what happened with me is like entrepreneurship was my thing. And in order to be successful as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things that you have to, there's like the underpinnings of a successful entrepreneur is like good sleep, good mental health, like, and all of this has been unpacked for me over the last 10, 15 years. It's like, I've had to learn and level up. So I think high performance, the definition of high performance for me started with, I think high performance for me was in the very beginning was just like hustle as hard as you can. Like no one can outwork me. And then I think it changes over time because you realize that that's actually not the answer.
Yeah.
But now it's much more diverse. I was telling you earlier, like I'm a full spectrum human at this point. So
Yeah.
high performance and success to me is being a good fiance. It's being a good family member. It's being a good leader. It's being healthy. It's having a great mindset every day, being happy, fulfilled, making good money, being wealthy. That's what a high performance life looks like to me now. But it's changed a lot over the years.
Yeah, and it's always going to evolve. And that's the interesting part. What I do love about you, Ryan, is you talk about a lot of things that you know and learned, but what do people know you as? Because you're a specialist in, with helping people with getting assistance, with AI. Like, tell the audience a little bit about like what people know about you and what you're working on right now.
I always, actually, somebody else created this description of me. They said that your gift is bending time. So I have the number of hours in the average human life tattooed on my chest. This was something that I did when I was young, because I've always been obsessed with time. And so for me, every business I've ever built, almost everything I've ever done has been about saving time, optimizing time, bending time, collapsing time. And it's just because I realize that it's such I'm going to be on Earth. I'm 33. I'm going to be on Earth for maybe another 70 years. And as wild as it is to say, like, we're all here for such a limited amount of time, and then we're going to die, and then that's it. And then you're going to be forgotten eventually over time. And so we have this limited window where we've been put on this earth to create something that's meaningful, that's going to, I actually think that like my purpose on earth is, like I always say this, my purpose is for other people to see the world through me. That means like my team, and when I say see the world, maybe it's physically see different parts of the world, but what I really mean is I want to be the person who has no fear and goes after things and can show people that whatever they want is possible. And so yeah, my whole thing is bending time, and
Yeah.
I do that through systems. And so I've my entire life I've always thought about, how does this work? Where does this come from?
We
I've
should
always
introduce you that way. Ryan the Time Bender.
Ryan the Time Bender. Yeah, yeah. It started with actually when I was really young. My dad, I was doing a lot of manual labor. So I grew up in Tennessee, and I'm like cutting wood, building houses, doing a lot of manual labor. My dad was really hardcore about like work ethic. Really, and most people would look at me and probably not see that, but like I spent my entire life working with my hands. And I remember I would go spend the night at friend's house, and I would have to be back like on a Friday night. I had to be at my house 7 a.m. ready to go to work every single weekend. Um, and so, yeah, I guess through that process, I was like, I want to spend more time with my friends. So I learned, I like used my skills to figure out how can I do things faster. I remember distinctly when I was like 8 years old, I had this go-kart, and my dad was like, "You got to go clean up this yard full of trees and sticks and stuff like that. Like, go clean it, drag it to the woods, whatever." And I remember grabbing a rope and tying it behind my go kart, and then like wrapping the sticks up, picking it, going and picking them up and wrapping them up, and then dragging them to the woods, and I got it done in like a tenth of the time. And I remember at the time my dad was like, "You're cutting corners, you're cutting corners, you're cutting corners, etc." And what I didn't realize is that actually would become my superpower. So when I started, I had always had a really really strong interest in technology. So I grew up in the era of computers and building computers and learning about computers and using them and all that. And once I realized the power of technology and systems, that's when like I learned at an early age how to hack things and build things. And
Was that normal for you in like your friend zone or other thing, or were you really aware of like, hey, this is really something, like I'm a little different than others? Did you spot that?
there were very few people like me with that particular interest. Yeah, maybe like one other friend that I can think of, but for me, like my brain has always wanted to make sense of how things worked. And once I learned how something worked, then I'm like, well, can I build it a different way? Can I make it function better? And it's funny because I would play with Legos and all this stuff when I was a kid, and I do the same thing now, but just with businesses. So um, yeah, it was like once I figured that out, and as I got older, I um, I realized that it's technology plus people plus systems, and then you've got this trifecta where anything you build is so much. It's just faster to build. It's easier. It's more enjoyable. It's more profitable. Um, so yeah, systems for me have always just come very naturally. Like when I walk out into the world, I see how things work, and it's just something I've been fascinated with. I don't want to be known at this point in my life, though. I don't want to be known as a systems guy anymore. I'm much more leaning into like AI and leadership and trying to get out of like, because I think the hard part as an entrepreneur is I I've always had like the ideas. I've always also been able to build the ideas, and I think it's a double-edged sword because if you're the classic visionary CEO that can see problems that need to be solved and also can solve them by how to build the things, it can be a huge waste of time. And whereas there's a lot of really incredible founders out there that can see the problem and then they are like, I don't have the skill set to do this, and I'm just going to hire the best people to do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't learn the people side of things until later in my life.
Yeah.
So a couple of interesting things that happened along the way in my journey. So when I was 18 years old, there was I was in my high school. I was at lunch, and I got a call from a guy that he was like claiming to be my dad on the phone, and didn't know who he was, didn't know anything about him, but he was like, I've waited until your 18th birthday to call you because it hasn't been like legally, I haven't been able to. And we spent a few years kind of in this weird, like, I don't know who you are. He wanted to build a relationship. And eventually we met for the first time and ended up becoming incredible. We have an incredible relationship even now. He's a great man, great father, great business person. And when we met in person, it was like I found another version of me that I didn't even know existed.
Wow.
It was so incredible. So it was wild. We ended up founding several companies together, making millions, going on these incredible adventures, journeys. And that was a lot of that experience was kind of how I cut my teeth in the world of entrepreneurship in a lot of ways. I had started at these smaller companies when I was younger, buying and selling, architectural supplies, cars, boats, planes, doing all these different types of like, find something at a lower price, sell it, make it better, playing around with advertising and marketing. And and then I met my dad, and it was just a wild. It's been a wild ride since then.
Yeah. Give me some ideas of some of the ventures you've done.
Well, there's this running joke among all my friends that I have done every job in the book. I've been like a skateboard instructor at a Christian summer camp. I have, I've done everything. I've literally done everything. It's funny. But in my entrepreneurial space, my journey actually started. Right out of college, before I started a company, I actually worked for this company called Assurian, and they're a big insurance. They basically provide all the insurance for major mobile phone carriers and technology. They still exist. They're huge. And I was sent overseas to live in the Philippines and train a team there. And I was helping train and build back-end systems and stuff like that so that they could support the U.S. operations. So for me, in my early 20s, it was such a wild adventure, and it opened my eyes to a lot of things that later became really critical parts of my entrepreneurial journey. When I came back to the States, I realized that I needed to leave Nashville, which is where I'm from, mainly because there wasn't enough. My tribe wasn't there, and that's another thing. You have to be around the right people. You have to. For me, I have always tried to be the dumbest person in the room, the lowest person on the totem pole. And so I left Nashville and I moved to San Diego, and I immediately got plugged into several communities here where it like changed my life. Mastermind communities. I initially thought they were like some kind of scam or something, right? Like
Some
it was
cult.
it was so weird.
Ryan the Time Bender and some cult in San Diego.
Yeah. I thought it was some kind of cult, and then because we're all sitting around a table every Monday talking about our lives, what we're doing, and it was just weird. And then over time, I realized like how critical and how much of my success has depended upon just the room that I'm in and the people that I'm being influenced by. So that's actually probably another part of like
Yeah.
high performance living is
With the digital age, do you see that as still really important, or people can just connect more than ever online?
I mean, for me personally, I don't even on social media, like I don't let anyone enter my mind share that you know I'm not trying like some part of their life is not something that I aspire to be.
I mean, like mastermind groups, people you connect with, your tribe connection. Do you find that more helpful in person than you do online?
They're different things. Like I wouldn't wanna sit in a room with like you and I are in Dan's elite group. I wouldn't want to sit in a room with 1,500 people and try to
Right.
sift through all that. So yeah, there's obviously a big difference. I think for a group like that, you benefit from there's just a larger sample size of when it comes to feedback, when it comes to possible connections and network and things like that. Um, where I have found the most, I think depth is really important as well. So width and depth. So just recently, like we have a group here in North County, San Diego, where I live, that we call Misogi. And if you look up the definition of
It's like a
of
Japanese version of like doing life together or something.
yeah, it's a Japanese purification ritual, but I think it's been loosely translated for us into a challenge that scares you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of something
And
else,
and
but
the,
that
the
makes sense.
idea is that there is only a chance that you will succeed in some of the misogis that you attempt. So we started this group a couple of years ago, and
That's from the inspiration of Jeff Itzler, right?
I actually don't know where it came from. Originally, the inspiration was the entrepreneur house, which I haven't shared anything about yet, but I lived in an entrepreneur house with a bunch of other multimillionaires that had, founders that had built these incredible companies. But I'll share more about that later. But yeah, the Misogi that I'm currently in is, we only have 4 to 6 people. We know each other really, really well, and you can also speak very vulnerably, and you can speak, you can call people out on their stuff, and
Hmm.
you can give them feedback that if someone in Dan's group as an example tried to give me the same feedback, it might not be heard the same way, nor do they really know who I am truly. So these people, we've all grown together, we've built together, we've lost together, we've you know everything. And I think having, I don't know how as a founder, if you're building a company, how people do it alone. I mean, it's so incredibly mentally, physically, emotionally taxing that you have to have some kind of group that you can go like, am I going crazy right now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
should I fire this person? Uh, am I gonna go bankrupt? Like, you got to have some group of people that can hold you to a standard, and you can also simultaneously be vulnerable with them about what you're going through.
Yeah.
That's been honestly, if there's anything that has led to any success that I've had in the past 10 years, it's literally that.
When did you start really putting the science experiment hat on, where you're a chemist and you're doing nootropics and you're adjusting, your sleep patterns and trying to like really be this high performance person where you're taking it really seriously in every aspect of your life? When did that happen? When was that evolving more in your life?
In 2018, I moved into the entrepreneur house, which I mentioned earlier. It was like it was a kind of like it was just a big house in Mission Hills here in San Diego, and it became the epicenter of entrepreneurship. A lot of really incredible founders came out of the entrepreneur house. Chandler Bolt from Self Publishing School, um, Jack from Dr. Squatch. Many people that have had big exits, big outcomes. They started this house, and then I was kind of like the second round of people. So there's 6 founders that live in there, and I remember when I was younger, like looking up to this group of guys that had this house where every Monday they had a mastermind where they go over their personal life, their business life. There's a whiteboard with all the house core values: accountability, integrity. There's every single month there's your name and what you're obligated to do or what you've agreed to do for that month as far as your personal goal, your business goal. There's a huge bookshelf with all the books that you could ever need to read about any particular subject. There's monthly wine nights and book clubs and these incredible dinners, which we became famous for in San Diego, which are this huge square table that would seat like 25 or 30 people. And we would have these dinners every so often, and we would bring, like, investors would fly in on private jets, and you'd have different people from our network come together. And during these dinners, we would all go around and share something about ourselves, or we give a toast or whatever it is. And to your question of when did I start becoming, you know, fully optimized, it was when I started living in that house, really. That's when I started getting exposed to, you know, we had a chef that was cooking everything. We had a person who was doing all the laundry. We had the house manager. We had the gym inside, the sauna. We had people walking around with weird glasses for their, you know, so it was over the top, right? Like over optimization.
Yeah, totally.
But that's when it started, because it was like you move into this house with the sole goal of building an empire and learning and growing as fast as possible, and you're with 6 other people that are all doing the same thing. And that's when I think that's when I got really serious about it. I had always been curious, but I got really serious about changing my behavior. I remember when I first moved into the house, I was getting up at like 9 in the morning and going to bed at like 1, because I was like, that's just how I am, right?
Yeah.
And you realize that that's not accurate. And you also have other people around you that are like highly successful, and you're like, well, they're not doing things this way. I see them getting up at 5 in the morning and doing breath work. I see them, you know, they're not working all day long, but they take breaks. Or I see them, you know, reading, you know, or taking time to meditate, and you learn and pick up all these things. I think that's for me when it became, it was really like in your face. Like, if you want to be successful at their level, you have to adopt some of these strategies.
Because I mean, I think there's like the high overview principles of like making sure your mind's right, your soul's right, you know, your body, you know, your you know, bank account, your relationships. I think there's some like high overview buckets that people maybe ignore, or they don't have all the way dialed in, and then trying to optimize those in disciplines and routines that allow that to be full all the time. How do you go about like making sure that there's alignment? Do you go through like a point where you're assessing yourself every week or every month or every quarter to really make sure those buckets are full, to make sure you're doing the right things in habits and routines and rhythms that allow those things to be optimized in that way?
When I first started this journey, I had to treat a lot of the stuff like a checklist. Now it is way more intuitive. You just know when you're not, you haven't been, you know, exercising mindfulness. You know when your physical body is starting to wear down. You know when you've overworked. You know when you've underworked. But back then it was, we used to do this process, and I have a template that I could probably share. But we, as part of the house, we would go on these quarterly retreats, and we would go to these really incredible destinations, like houses up in the mountains with these expansive views. And the whole goal is to elevate your mindset so that you can think about the future effectively. And so what we would do is we would take the first 24 hours was all about reflection. So you go through this process of answering these various questions. Some of them would be, what if you look back at your calendar, look back at your last quarter? We do these quarterly, right? So what is the 20% of people things or activities that contributed to 80% of your sadness, angst, depression, anger, right? Then we would look at what's the 20% of activities, things, or people that brought the most happiness, joy, satisfaction, whatever. And so you get really clear on who are the people that are dragging you down? What are the activities that are dragging you down? What is the stuff that you know is just not working for you? And that list for me would sometimes just go on and on and on, right? And then, and that's what they say about like high performance. It's less about what you do and more about what you don't do. And that is, that process is super helpful. So we go through a reflection process where we answer these questions, and then we go and all share them together. There's a lot, there's a whole, I mean, this would take all day. We would schedule out literally, eating is, super quickly in between. We'd start with breath work and get our mindset right. And then we would go through reflection. We would look at, how have our core values changed from last quarter to this quarter? What are the top 3 things we're most proud of this quarter? What are our biggest failures? What are our biggest wins? And so you set the stage for what then would be the next day, which is an entire goal setting seminar, which is, and I even built, I forgot about this actually until now, but I built this template of, every major area of your life. And then what is at the top of every major area, it's like, what one thing such that by doing it makes everything else easier or unnecessary, right? So if you look at finances, what one thing such that by doing it becomes easier or unnecessary? And so maybe your one thing is like, my one thing for finances is that I need to check my bank account balances every single day so that I'm not making dumb decisions, right? Or, and so we learned how to reflect and then get really essential with goal setting. We're not setting a million goals, because guess what? We're going to be presenting all of our goals to the whole group the next day, out loud. Here's what I do. And people would question them. People would say, why, that isn't specific enough. You're gonna get stronger. What does that mean? And so we would kind of like force each other to create smart goals, measurable goals. So that's how we used to do it. That's how I used to do it, and I still, even to this day, I still do some parts of that. But talk about an incredible
sounds like
system for growth.
Yeah. And then with the most recent venture you're in right now, with helping high-level entrepreneurs get assistant and really be able to buy back your time, like tell me about how all of what you've learned in the past has built this incredible company where you're training people in AI, you're placing people in companies, and you're really helping create not just anybody to help anything, you're really creating some amazing placements with people. Talk about how you're integrating an assistant with AI. What's the formula for that, and how did you end up creating that?
I'm going to separate AI and executive assistants just because I see them as 2 different things right now in my life. On the executive assistant front, over 5 years ago, we started a company called Assistant Launch, and I started this because, number one, I lived overseas and I met all this incredible talent, and these people were so service-oriented and smart and capable, and the narrative I heard back home was the opposite. It was like, these people are so hard to work with, and communication and language and all this stuff, and I was like, that wasn't the experience that I've had. And as a systems guy, I was like, I think I can build a better system than anybody else has done before for finding / attracting, recruiting really good people, and then training them, and then helping them to implement into clients' lives. And it has changed a lot. I think in the beginning, the way that we started this company, it was really interesting. This is kind of a fun origin story. I had an idea. I had an idea about like executive assistants. By the way, 5 years ago, were not something that people talked about.
Mm.
It was people talked a lot about VAs. We were actually on the tail end of the 4-hour work week. 4-hour work week. Everybody hire a VA thing. Like 4-hour work week came out, 10 years prior, and then people didn't really talk about VAs that much. Certainly weren't talking about executive assistants outside of like the corporate space. So there was this thing where I'm living in this house, and I saw all my founder friends who were very successful, companies worth tens of millions of dollars, that their personal lives were in shambles. When they would travel, or like their email, their calendar, their time management, everything was just in pretty terrible shape. And I realized that I could build a system to improve their lives. And I had experience working with executive assistants myself, and I was like, because I was like one of the only people doing it in my friend group that had someone who was like handling my email and my calendar and all this cool stuff. And I was taking cool trips, and my assistant was taking care of it. And I would, show people my phone, and I'd, look at this is crazy. Like, look at this. We'd go on these trips to like Palm Springs, and I'd be like, you guys want a massage or something like that? Like, you want me to order a massage? And I'd be like, hey, can you get me a massage? And they would just show up at the house, and they'd be like, well, how did you do that? Somebody does this work for you. And so what the cool origin story is that I came up with this idea, and I'm like, I'm going to build a company that helps founders leverage executive assistants. And I was like, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to have it ready in like 4 months. I'm going to launch in 4 months. At the time, it was like October 28th of 2019, 18, something like that. And everybody in the house was like, no, you're going to do it in 11 days. And here's the date that you're going to launch. I still have the notebook where I scratched out the original date, and they forced me in one of our Monday meetings to redo it. And so that day, it was November 11th, there was a friend of mine was having a conference in Mexico, and he's like, you're going to go speak at the conference. You're going to be an executive assistant expert. And what was wild is I showed up with literally no experience. I didn't have any company or anything. I had my assistant print off a list of all the things that an EA can do for you. And then we showed up, and I spoke to this group of like 50 people, and they were all asking questions, and that's how we got like our first 10 clients.
Wow.
And we were profitable from day one. And I was like, flung myself off the cliff and built on the way down. And that is, that's how we started. And it was such a wild journey. I actually have clients that I met from that event that are still clients today, which is incredible. And I think it speaks to not only the problem that we're trying to solve, but also like the quality of what we're building. So it's changed a lot in the last 5 years. We used to think it was just get the right person, and that's going to solve everybody's problem. Then we realized it was like, okay, let's get the person, but then also we need to provide a process for people. And then we're like, that isn't enough. We need the person, the process and systems, and then the support on the back end. So our current model is we work with fast growth founders, people that are ambitious, people that are busy, moving, growing, hustling, that are not managing their time and energy well enough. And energy is a really big one. Energy is probably the most important one. I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago at a friend of mine's podcast. You have this like golden energy every day. It's 3 to 4 hours. That's really all you've got. It's where you can focus, where you can flow, where you can build, create. And a lot of founders are spending so much of that golden energy just doing really ultimately useless tasks, or tasks that ultimately they're not even the best person to do it, because they're not good at this stuff and they don't enjoy doing it. So they're not passionate, they're not proficient. Where they need to be spending their time is where they're passionate and proficient. And so we have this quadrant that Michael Hyatt actually created, and you can think of it as like a pie sliced into 4, and there's one slice of it is the intersection of where you're passionate and proficient, and we call that the desire zone, your zone of genius. The bottom is the drudgery zone. So this is, for most people, it's the stuff that's on the bottom of your to-do list every single day that just keeps dragging on and on and on and on. It's the stuff that you don't want to do, keeps you up at night. That's the intersection of what you're not passionate about and not proficient at, right? So that's the obvious category where most people try to attack. But there's two other kind of, they're like secret areas where people are also wasting a ton of time. And that's the intersection of what you're not passionate about, but proficient at, right? So I'm not passionate about my email, but I'm good at it. And that ends up, we call that the distraction zone. So
Sure.
I'm not, or it's not the distraction zone, it's the disinterest zone. So it's I'm not passionate about it, but I'm good at it, and people will continue to do it. A lot of founders put things on their shoulders because they think that that's what they're supposed to do, and maybe that's what gets you to your first 500K, your first million. But then beyond that, it's about buying back your time. And the other category is the distraction zone, which is, this one is big. It's the intersection of what you're passionate about but not proficient. And I'm passionate about design and the way things look. I'm passionate about good copy, etc. And I will spend a disproportionate amount of time on that stuff when I shouldn't.
Yeah.
So part of our process is bringing in clients, identifying those categories where they're using their time, where they're wasting energy in their personal lives and their business lives, because as a founder, those things are intertwined. 30 minutes spent on the phone with the gas company is 30 minutes you could be closing more deals, becoming a better leader, reading, etc. So our whole MO is we come in and we take all of that stuff, we get the laundry list, extract it all out of you, get really clear on the 85% that we can crush. And we ultimately pair clients with an assistant who loves to do what they don't love to do and is really good at what they're not good at.
Yeah.
And then you layer in the person, then you layer in the process and systems. So for us, we have a 4-week accelerator, which we realized every single client that comes on board, if you don't have someone truly owning your email, owning your calendar, time, energy, owning regular recurring processes in your business, and owning various things in your personal life, you're not going to feel the full support of an executive assistant, and you keep getting dragged back down into the muck. So we created this 4-week accelerator to address that particular issue, which is, when someone comes on board, your first 4 weeks, we're nailing those things. So we're the systems that need to be put in place, putting them in place, checking to make sure that they happen. So you got the people, the process and systems, and then you got the support. And my support team is regularly looking over every single day how you're doing, how the communication is going with your assistant. Are there challenges? Is the assistant taking on more responsibility over time, or are they continuing to work on the same thing over and over and over? So we have I think we have the best system for an executive assistant because it's been almost 6 years, and I think we have worked with 650 plus founders, everybody from, new idea of a company to several $100 million Y Combinator backed founders, and I've seen everything across the board. And it's really fun, and I'm really passionate about it. So that's what we've been building, and it's we're in scale mode right now. We're really enjoying the pace, and it has actually forced me into an even higher performance lifestyle than I'm used to.
And then you also teach people how to do AI. How do you blend that high performance for yourself of what you've learned? Because you also have like a mastermind that maybe we can list down below, where you're inviting people into this AI group where you're teaching about the most cutting edge things. And then you also blend that with an assistant that you found that's going to be like a superpower for people. How do you go about that?
Yeah, you've actually been to our masterminds. Truthfully, the blending of AI and team is actually quite difficult. We talked about this last night in our mastermind, looking for strategies to get people to care more. Um, at the founder level, it's not that. I mean, well, at the founder level, uh, I would say a lot of the founders in my circle are interested in AI, and they are building AI. Building agents. They're building workflows into their business. They're talking about it. They're jumping on masterminds. If you're not, you're going to get lost. So a lot of founders I know are doing that, but their teams are struggling. And I think last night I sort of drew a line in the sand. And I was like, guys, I'm just going to build something. I'm just going to build a training. I'm going to build a training methodology that I'm going to use for my own team. And we're going to find a creative way to get people interested and excited about AI inside a business, because I realized how much leverage it can create. For me, my AI journey started like 2.5 years ago. I started getting involved in more open AI stuff, kind of like I was very curious about it. And then I realized almost immediately, because of my systems engineering background, I realized that I've always felt like I knew exactly where it's going, and it's just continued to play out that way. And so, yeah, it's been a really incredible journey. We started this mastermind called the Boundless AI Mastermind. We meet every other Thursday evening, and we talk for 2 hours, and we go over updates, hot seat questions, and we have a moderated mastermind where we go over 4 questions. It's like, what's your biggest win? What are you building? What do you want to show off? What's your biggest question? And then who else do you want to invite to the mastermind? And we end up having these incredible conversations, learning from each other, watching what each other are building. And the end result of this has been that I am very confident that I can, like, as far as the AI landscape, building in the AI landscape, building inside my business, building inside other people's businesses, I have a very high degree of confidence about anything that I could need to do. If I don't know the answer, I know certainly where to get the answer. That has been such an exciting part of my life the last few years. It's like we could have a very long conversation about where the future of AI is going and how it's going to change everybody's life. Maybe we'll store that for part 2. But
I love the high level idea that you have. It's like you're in a position now, after being in the trenches of your businesses, building businesses, and then now you're working on businesses, and now you're thinking more of a higher level aptitude, where you're thinking like a really strategic entrepreneur. And I think this is probably helpful for the listeners here, is trying to think about what kind of level up you need to do in your personal life that allows you to have that leverage with an assistant, and also learning how AI will help operate. And you need to know how to not just be the person in the trenches, but learn some leadership aspects of delegation, and also like optimization and everything. How does that overview now of like leading and being involved and influencing people in directions of companies and everything, how does that all play a part? What are some of the key principles and habits that you think are going to be really critical for someone to really learn and level up in?
Yeah. Dan said something, Dan Martell, for those who aren't in the same group that I am with Nathan. He said something to the effect of, like, if you don't take yourself seriously, other people won't either. And that's the core principle of all of this, is like, I have, if you pull up my phone background right now, I have all of my goals. I got this very handsome looking muscular dude, right, which is one of my goals. I've got I've got me speaking on stage. I've got, it's just,
Yeah.
before I had those tiles on my phone and I was like, okay, cool, that's what I want to do. But you have to actually like go out and face fears and go do the stuff and be a pro and take yourself seriously. I think as I've started leaning into that level of high performance mentality over the last, I mean, really, so I mean, truthfully, it started 2 years ago when I started training, and I started working with a trainer, and I set a goal to go from, I was 152 pounds 2 years ago. Actually, what is today? The 8th. So 2 years and 7 days ago, I was 152 pounds, and now I actually weighed in yesterday at 198 pounds.
Wow.
And I spent the last 2 years in the gym learning. And I've been through different cycles of trying to put on weight, trying to put on muscle, and I had all these limiting beliefs around what was required and how difficult it was and all this stuff. And if people actually knew the behind the scenes of what I've done to do to basically achieve my dream body, and I'm still not even there yet, but if people knew that all I did was go into the gym for 1 hour a day, 4 days a week, and I ate the food I was supposed to eat, and I listened to what the people told me to do, and I abandoned my perfection mentality that I used to have, and realized that good consistently is better than perfect, once or twice a week.
Yeah.
You leverage that thinking, and then you just it compounds and compounds and compounds. And I look at the front covers of like Men's Health magazine and stuff like this, and like, this new thing, this thing here, it's six-pack abs, and it's like, it is so simple. Just go to the gym consistently and recognize that you are not your mind, and your mind is going to try to trick you, and it's going to try to get you to not go to the gym because it's going to make up all these reasons and excuses. It's actually funny. I had a period like a year into my journey where I was starting to get really strong, like my legs were starting to get really strong, and I was lifting heavier weights. I was like squatting heavier and all that stuff. And I would come in on my leg days were Tuesdays, and I would come in on Tuesday, and I was like, dude, my knee is and I had legitimate knee pain. My knee is killing me right now. And what would result was that he'd be like, all right, well, let's change up the workout a little bit. Let's taper down the weight or whatever. And then at some point after doing that like 2 or 3 times in a row, he goes, next week, I'm going to stop telling you when leg day is, and we're going to try something. I'm not going to tell you when leg day is. You're just going to come in. And what was so funny is the next week, he didn't tell me when leg day was. And I showed up, and I realized in that moment that my mind was actually creating a pain in my knee to get me to make an excuse to not do the hard thing, which like leg days are usually, for most people, it's the hard thing.
You have mental, like, you don't even know you're thinking about this stuff, and it's just happening. It's so crazy how internally sometimes they say you're your worst enemy, and sometimes you don't even know you are. And now it's like those are examples of it.
Here's the other one too. Like I used to have this limiting belief, like, I didn't sleep well last night, so I guess I guess I'm gonna have to taper my training back, or maybe I won't train today at all. Maybe I actually won't train today or tomorrow because my sleep just wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
And on several occasions, I hit personal records. The days that I had no sleep or like didn't have much sleep, I hit personal records, and I'd be, just shocked. And so there's all going through that journey of setting a goal, and then I think because of my systems mentality, I even have I wrote out a manifesto. I was on a plane traveling from Costa Rica back to California, and it was like I had just turned 31 or something like that, and I was like, my back is killing me right now, and I'm in this plane. I'm like, I'm not going to be 30. I refuse to be in my mid 30s and being like, oh, everything hurts and all that. So I wrote out this manifesto, and I said, I am going to put on 25 pounds of muscle at X% body fat. I'm going to hire a nutritionist. I'm going to hire a trainer. I'm going to work with the best trainer in San Diego. And I'm going to, I built a system for myself that I could just follow unconsciously. And it's so wild how you can do that with any area of your life. You can do that with learning. You can do that with, go figure out where the best source of information is, and create a system for yourself to not fail. Go read 50 pages a day and then go implement it. Just, yeah, I guess I've always seen goals almost systematically. It's like
Yeah.
if you can create conditions for you to not fail, then like that's the best way to achieve what you want.
And that's I think hopefully the big takeaway from our conversation for our hearers is, and I love this because I've had to build in boundaries for myself for success, because I knew it wasn't easy, but I knew I needed to build in and bake in and build that muscle of discipline and routine and rhythms to actually force me to do what I know I needed to do, that I wanted to do, that it was like on my mind to goals. And it was like, that was the recipe of success, is when you force yourself to be disciplined in what you know you should do, and you create the leading lagging indicators of like, this is what it will take to do it. And I think people have shallow goals. It's like the beginning of the year, I want to lose weight, but well, how much? And at what time and which way, and what does that look like when they define the goals, lead lagging indicators of making money or getting healthy or having good relationships? There's the outcome, but we need to like really dial it in with trying to figure out the solutions of that. And you've been a great success story from our hearers on this podcast, of seeing that play out in so many arenas in so many different ways. And I appreciate so much for you being on today, Ryan, and hearing all these different things, or our listeners hearing all these things that will help. How can people follow you and connect with you further and learn more about you along your journey, man?
I'm all over Instagram these days, which is it's just funny. It's like not the platform for professionals, but I am a really relationship-driven person, and I like having a big network and people that I can, what's going on in your life, and holding people accountable and giving people, props for their weight loss journey and stuff like that. So Instagram at Ryan Brazzell, RyanBrazzell. You can find me there. I'm on LinkedIn, yeah, those are the two main areas. And you can also email me. But and then my company is Assistant Launch, www.assistantlaunch.com. And usually what I do for people is we'll meet and we'll just have like a candid conversation about how are you using your time, and just genuinely founder to founder trying to understand where there's opportunity for you to buy back more time and buy back more energy, spend more time with your kids, go learn to scuba dive, like whatever it is, scale your company.
Love that. I'll put all those links down below so everybody can have that. But Ryan, super glad you're on it. Appreciate it. Everybody who's listening, we'll see you on the next episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right.